Anyone who's been watching this channel for a long time will remember the DayZ times, and I really loved that game for a while as it just offered up experiences that I had never had before in a video game. At its core, it was a survival game, and it still is, but it was more than that at the time. It was a way to tell stories, get yourself in random situations, meet strange people, have a laugh, nail epic headshots that really mattered, and at times I do miss that to some extent, and I like to reminisce. Plenty of other survival games have come along since, such as Rust or even Ark Survival Evolved, all with their own twist on the genre, but none of them really gripped me like DayZ once did. And I think a lot of developers have tried to harness that survival core, but warp it into something a little bit different. Now, the Battle Royale genre was definitely something that was born from that, and we all know how well BR games have done and how many are around these days. H1Z1 I think is probably the best example. That game started life as a survival game with base building and everything before it was really pushed and turned into a BR game. While I personally haven't played DayZ for years, I don't even have it installed, it isn't gone. Some people play it every single day, although one of the assistant studios has just been closed and there are some question marks around if development will continue or not. But for me, the progression on the original mod for Armour and subsequent standalone version didn't meet my expectations. There were numerous frustrating game-breaking bugs and performance problems that just marred it for years. Cheaters were rampant and the gameplay didn't evolve enough to keep me engaged. I think in general too, I just got bored of the grind of the survival game. It didn't appeal to me as much anymore. And the game's reluctance to make it easier to play with your friends or in a squad just killed any hype that I had left. However, some people are still enjoying DayZ on a regular basis, but is it possible for another game to come along and capture that same feeling that DayZ once had, but in a better, more refined quality package? DayZ is one such game that's trying to do just that. I've seen a lot of buzz for it recently and I wanted to check it out for myself, so let's take a look. As with all of these games, you spawn on a very large map. Naked, alone, and afraid. It's like the start of a really bad horror movie, but we're used to this in games by now. You do get given a knife though, and a lighter. The one thing to remember about DayZ though is that unlike DayZ, there are no zombies to worry about. Sadly, there are things more deadly roaming around the world. AI with guns. Much like in games like Escape from Tarkov, the world is populated not only with players but also with AI scavs. These scavs will vary in difficulty to basic civilian type enemies all the way up to fully equipped soldiers, depending on where you are on the map and if you're completing a mission or not. More on that later. As always, you want to get to some buildings and loot up as fast as you can, and the AI tends to populate roads into towns, so try to avoid these early on unless you want to get into a fight. In terms of actual players, well, there are around 50 on a server at any one time, and you're all thrown into a 50-kilometer square map. Interestingly though, this is merely part of the map that will actually be available on release, and the actual map that they plan on releasing when the game is finished, they say, is 225 kilometers squared, which, if my memory serves me right, is almost the same size as the original DayZ map. Currently in the game there are about 15 weapons available, from sidearms, shotguns and rifles, and you can actually head down to one of the traders to see all of the weapons available. DayZ has this interesting mechanic where part of the map is a safe zone highlighted in green. And in this area you're safe from the clutches of any sneaky enemies, although in my playtime I did notice some players hiding quite close to the safe zone trying to catch you off guard, so be wary of that. When inside the safe zone, you can buy weapons, armor and anything in between from traders. If you're short of medicine and food, providing you have the cash, you can find money by looting NPCs or selling items that you pick up on your travels. Also, don't expect to just come to a trader and buy a rifle after killing a few pesky NPCs, because the price will be very high. There's also an area in the safe zone where you can store high value items in a vault, even money. So if you don't want to carry something around with you, it's a nice alternative. What if you don't have the cash though, which is highly likely of course? In that case, you need to get out into the world and find yourself some nourishment as well as weaponry. And much like with DayZ, you need to eat and drink to survive. Find yourself some water, soda or perhaps some lovely tuna fish to keep yourself ticking over. Of course, in a game like this, you're going to be injured quite a lot. Thankfully, the game has plenty of crafting options to help you get out of a jam. When you find clothes out in the world, you can tear them up for rags, and then you can combine rags with moonshine or vodka that you find in the wild. And that will make sterilized rags to help you heal when you're hurt. In fact, the game only has a limited amount of crafting right now, but there will be more recipes on release, they say, and you can craft bags and other things too, even build bases. Bases, you say? Well, this is something that will be in the game on release, so it's not fully completed right now, but the core elements are there. So if you have the materials such as wood and metal, you can start to build yourself a base. You'll need an axe to get the wood, but that shouldn't be too hard to find. And you get logs by hitting a tree, but they don't seem to break right now. If you want to craft planks though, you'll need a saw, and then you'll also need to find a hammer and nails. This may seem quite slow for one person, but just remember that you can also team up with friends, so that will definitely streamline the whole process. And if you don't join a game with any friends, you can always make some. The game has proximity voice chat, which you would expect from a game like this, and you can easily approach other players and invite them into your squad if you think they won't backstab you. Earlier on I mentioned missions, and these are some of the PvE elements of the game, although often include PvP as it's quite hard to avoid. When a mission is available, it will appear on your HUD and a red arrow will show up on your map telling you the location and the difficulty of the mission. If you complete the mission, which involves taking on lots of AI, you will usually be rewarded with a supply crate, and this reminds me quite a bit of Tarkov in many ways. Anger one AI scav and they'll all just pounce on you, and it can be really difficult to survive. The all guns blazing approach in this game really isn't going to work out all that well for you. After all, this is a very immersive tactical multiplayer shooter with realistic elements, and PvP, PvE too, it says so on their website. So it's a bit more grounded in reality. The other thing to remember though is that these missions show up for other players too. So if you're going to a mission, the chances are that other players are as well, and you may end up fighting against AI and other real people, so keep your wits about you and watch your back. In terms of the gunplay mechanics, it is relatively straightforward, and although this is a more tactical shooter, you shouldn't play it expecting the complexity of a game like Tarkov when it comes to weapons. Like, reloading doesn't waste a mag. You don't have to put 7 different attachments on your gun or anything along those lines. It's very streamlined in that respect, but the guns feel nice enough to use. During early access, they're also going to be adding 1 or 2 road vehicles to the game, and on full release, they want road, land and water vehicles, which I think is very ambitious. Let's touch on some of the bad things though. First of all, the game is a paid for early access game, so you can't expect a gem straight out of the gates. It is on Steam though, and it's being developed by Bad Pixel, and they're a very small development team. In my playtime, I did have a few issues, so it's only fair that I mention them. I had 2 crashes, although credit where credit is due, at least I could reconnect to the server that I was on and continue with my same character, which is something at least. Performance was okay for the most part, although there were quite a few visual bugs, including a lot of popping at distance, and sometimes the game just doesn't look all that clear or sharp when you reduce the post-processing. That could be something to do with the Unreal Engine though that the game is using. It's a common problem with Unreal games. And arguably the last issue and the biggest, most important one was lag. I tried quite a few servers and eventually I found one that was pretty good, but the ones before that were quite bad. Lots of lag when moving around and encountering enemies, even when my ping was around 40 to 50. Of course, these are all things that can be improved upon. After all, this is an early access game. However, that's a really important point because maybe that's the entire problem. How long did DayZ players wait around for things to be fixed? Early access, mod version, full version, promises lost and kept. And do players really want to commit to something so similar that has promise, definitely, but could take a long time to fully realize? I suppose that's for you, for each individual person to decide what to do with your wallet. But the time frame for the game is for it to be in early access for 12 to 18 months. And with any hiccups along the way, that could easily turn into more than 2 years. The other thing to bear in mind, as I said, this is a very small development team. There's only a handful of people working on it. It's not like it's a massive studio with a huge budget. So I think what they've created so far is quite impressive, but big updates will no doubt take time. If you like the look of DayZ though, then I definitely think you're going to have to be patient for those updates to come, but we will see. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you did like it, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.